Okay, so one of the things you want to take a look at is once you design your wireframes, what you should have is two wireframes for your desktop version and two mobile phone layout wireframes. And from that, you got to decide which one is best to use to mock up. Mock-up is going to be more of the visual look of what the end result's going to look like. So you're going to add color, you're going to add pictures, you're going to, if you don't have the exact pictures, you can always change them down the road, but put in a picture where you think that you're going to be placing that. So it should resemble the end result. You should be using the color scheme. It should be using the font choices that we learned in the first task and in milestone 2. So in this, they have you use Photoshop. The wireframes, they had you work with Illustrator. So Photoshop, they're going to do mock-ups, and they're going to have you create artboards. And one of the desktop versions is going to be 960 pixels. The other one's going to be 380. Now, a lot of students have issues of not knowing how artboards work. So what I want to do is I want to go up to File, New. I want to go first of all to Web, and we can view all the presets if we wanted to. Now, one of the things is here we said 960, right? So I'm going to go in and you can select the first one here, but what we're going to do is I'm just going to modify the width over here to be 960. You can leave the height the way it is. Okay, I'm going to click on Create, and this is going to create the first artboard. Now, here's what I do, is I duplicate the artboard 1, I drag it down to the new icon right here. It creates an artboard 1 copy. Now, what I want to do is I want to rename this. I'll say artboard 1, I'll say 2, I'll just put in web. Now, as you can see here, it puts a duplicate. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change the properties there to make sure it's the width of the right size. Now, if you right click on that, you can see here is duplicate and delete. So if you have to delete it for some reason, you can always do that. Now, we're going to open up the properties here. So up here, there's a little icon that says Properties. You can also find it under Window Properties. And what I want to do is I want to change the width to be 380. Now, if I want to keep the height the same, you can make it shorter if you want, but at least the width has to be 380. Okay? Now, as you can see here, you have two artboards. One's for the desktop and one's for the web. Now you start working with it. You can use ruler guides and make sure you have your color scheme added. If you work with the swatches and you brought in from the color library, you can actually load those in if you wanted to. So now you have to take your time and recreate your wireframe as a website. Okay, and now some things that you can go in and utilize if you really want to work with this, you can always go up to View, and you can always turn on Show, and I like to turn on the grid option. So I can see how everything is set up. Okay, you can change your grid properties just like you do in Illustrator. So like in this case, I can go up to Edit, and I can come down to Preferences. I'll do Guides, Grids, and Slices. And in this case, the grid is every 1 inch. If in this case, we could do pixels. Instead of doing 1 pixels, grid line every 1 pixels. Just like in Illustrator, we could do 960 divided by 12, and that's going to be 80 pixels. We click OK. It's going to make it nice, equal spots there. And now you just kind of go in and you start designing. You work with your layers. Just make sure as you're working with this, we'll come back and open up the layers. If you're going to work with Artboard 1, make sure the Artboard 1 layer is selected, or Artboard 2. Okay, and then what you'll do is if you're going to go in and add text, here's a rectangle tool. So what we'll do is we'll go in and I will select this, and then I'll fill this in. Okay, and then what you might be doing is you might be dividing up into, you have your text up here. So depending on your font choice and your font size, then what you want to do is take your text and I'm gonna go up here and click. Oops, and I click twice there. I'm going to type in Solid A Designs. Now it's the same color as the text, so maybe your text, what you chose was going to be white. Notice it's too large, so we're going to bring it down to 48 points. Now FYI, if those grid lines are too busy for you, just go up to Edit, Preferences, and what I'll do is instead of saying subdivisions 4, I'll do 0. Or I'm sorry, 1. That's right, 1. That's up to you on that part. Okay, it helps you just to do some aligning purposes, and you can put your subheading in. Maybe you create a logo, you know. And again, here we can open up their different graphics. So let's say I have a don't have anything that's a logo right away. Well, actually, we have this. I'll open this up. So what I'll do is I'll select this, I'll copy it, I'll paste it in. It's a little bit too large. So I'll scale it down. I'll use my transform tool. Hold down my shift key to make it smaller. Okay, I'm going to take my text, I'm going to move the logo up here. Now I don't like that white background, so what I can do is I can use my, let's see here, my magic wand tool. We'll delete that. And so what I'm doing is I'm mocking this up to make sure it looks the way I want for my desktop. Then once you do that, you know, again, as you work with images, bring your images in. If you don't have the exact images yet, just put a placeholder in and put a fake image in so we can take a look at it, you know. Then over here on the web design, then you're going to start, it's not going to be exactly what it's going to look like on the desktop. Usually I tell people to do one columns, but you're going to use the same color scheme. So maybe we decide that we go in and we have this, oops, got to make sure you're in the right layer. Got to go back to layer 1 of Artboard 2. Artboard 2. And that's where I always get wrong there. I'll fill it with that pink color. Okay. So, and you know, what's nice about this though, if you want to use certain elements, like for example this logo, okay, I can go in, since it's on its own layer. That's the beauty of this, you work with layers. You might want to rename these too as you go. And so what I'll do is I'll copy this, or I could drag and drop it over into, like for example, I can hold down my Option key or Alt key on the Mac and I can drag it up into Artboard 2. Now what will happen here, let's move the logo layer up above layer 1. Okay, so we can see it. And then I'm going to move this over and I'm going to center it. And then I can bring in, if I wanted to, Solid A Designs. And this is where, you know, let me just make the layers panel a little bit larger. I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key on the Mac. I'll just drag it up. And then what I want to do is I'm going to put it right center right below the logo. And again, what you're trying to do is create a mock-up of this, and then you're going to save this as a PSD, you know, and once you're done with it. So again, it's just trying to visual this. And next thing I would do is I have to add my navigation bar, you know, and that's simply just taking your rectangle tool. And what I'll do is I will fill this in with whatever my color scheme is. So if it's, let's see here, let me create a new layer first. Put it on a new layer. Name it Navigation. I'll choose that orange color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit fill. Okay, now what will happen And actually you can name these buttons, you can create separate layers. So now I'm going to take my text tool, let me deselect. I'm going to type in home. It's too big, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose, let's just choose the white text here. And let's reduce the size down to make sure it fits perfectly. Okay. Now, what I will do is then I'll come to my layers panel. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on both layers. Okay. Now I can take my move tool and I'm going to duplicate by holding down the option key or alt key for the Mac. And I'm going to release, and I'm going to do the same thing. Release, do the same thing. Release. Actually, that doesn't fit because the way the 390 is, so I might not have that for the last one. And then all I have to do is take my type tool and then change about, if I can spell it right. Now you might have to make some adjustments afterwards to make sure it lines up perfectly. And you might have to adjust the font size too. You might not be able to fit the entire text in there. So what you're doing is you're just recreating, going step by step, and then you kind of move on, you know. So now you have a subheading, you know. You'll put in some, let's say you want to put a graphic in. So let me open up another graphic here. And I'll copy this over. It's too large, so I'm going to reduce the size. Again, I use Control T, but you can do free transform under Edit. Hold down your Shift key to resize it. And then maybe you're going to have some text right below it. So again, Photoshop is great for when it comes to mockups. Illustrator is great when it comes to wireframes.